The Avatar saga continues with the third installment of the franchise, which sees the next chapter in the life of Jake Sully, the US Marine turned leader of the Na'vi indigenous people of the planet Pandora, played by actor Sam Worthington, opposite Oscar winner Zoe Saldana in the role of his wife Neytiri, along with fellow returning cast members Sigourney Weaver, Kate Winslet and Stephen Lang. This time there are new enemies as well as old antagonists to contend with, as the battle for the preservation of their world and way of life grows even more dangerous in James Cameron's Avatar: Fire and Ash.
This is the only pure thing in this world. The fire came from the mountain, burned our forest. My people cried for help. But Ava did not come.
As the multi-Oscar winning second highest grossing movie director of all time, James Cameron's films include some of cinema's most iconic titles, including The Terminator, Terminator 2: Judgment Day, Aliens, Titanic, and the Avatar franchise. And beyond their cultural impact and box office success, his films have also taken on a greater meaning in their narrative aptitude for providing commentary on aspects of human life and society that have remained relevant to this day.
Judita DaSilva, Arise Play Nigeria. If in 2025, if there is one phrase I say more than anything else in comparative discussions about film and real life, it's James Cameron warned us. Whether it's the rise in the human dependence on technology or AI or the erosion of nature or the need for interplanetary exploration for the point of habitation, your films have stood the test of time for being a meta critique on the folly of human beings. As a filmmaker.
And our relationship with technology, for better and worse.
Was that a passive or active intention when you set about making your work?
Absolutely. Yeah, both. I mean, it's my active intention. You know, first of all, I personally have a love-hate relationship with technology. I love what it can do. I'm intrigued and curious about engineering problems and innovation and creating new tools that I can use as an artist. And yet I can also see how virtually every technology that we've ever mastered as the human race has been weaponized and used in some evil way. And I think the only exception to that really is not generative AI, but CG. I started with computer-generated imagery and character creation and so on back in the early 90s. Technically, I started in 1988 on The Abyss with one sort of character we created in The Abyss. But then we took it forward with Terminator 2, and then I founded a company to kind of try to be at the forefront of all that. And I don't think that's ever been sort of weaponized or used for evil purposes. I think at first there was a lot of skepticism about whether that would ever live up to live action practical effects and that sort of thing. But I think we've proven that case over the subsequent, 3 decades. But I do see a lot of danger around generative AI for artists and for the entertainment business if we're not very careful with it. I think it's a form of sorcery that can get out of control pretty quickly.
This world goes much deeper than you imagine.
Protect your sister. Yes, sir. Stay under cover. What does that always say?
Sully's stick together.
No, the other one.
Sully's never quits.
That's right. Sully's never quit.
The Avatar franchise began in 2009 with pioneering filmmaking technology. It was devised by James Cameron himself through his film production company Lightstorm Entertainment, which continues to produce all of the Avatar films to this day. Although the gap between the first film and its sequel, The Way of Water, was significant, Fire and Ash was written and devised to work in tandem with its predecessor, and in doing so, the narrative and production momentum that ties the overall story of Avatar together is felt by both the audience, the cast, and production team behind all of the movies.
And looking at Avatar, I just had I had to ask you this question. There was such a large gap between the first one and the second one.
Yeah.
And the mechanics of filmmaking, the techniques for the dissemination of film, the media through which we discuss or analyze film radically changed.
Yes.
Is there any part of you that is curious or even inclined that, let's say, between the penultimate and the final Avatar, if you were to leave another big gap, imagine what the world would be and the kind of Avatar you would make in response to that?
You're getting a little hypothetical on me, but I think it's better if I just tell the story chronologically. So there was a huge gap between Avatar and when we actually even started production on the sequels, which was in 2017. I would say that the script sort of became mature for movie 2 and movie 3 around 2015. So we're talking about 10 years ago. Any comment that appears to resonate with the present world that you might see in Fire and Ash was actually written 10 years ago. So I think all the trend lines were there at the time. You know, our kind of collective industrial society's rape of the natural world and the degradation of the habitat of indigenous people and all those things. That was all going on back then, and I think it's accelerating now. Everything's only getting worse. The hatred and the intolerance, the prejudice, the racism, all that stuff is only getting worse. So things that were bothering me then, they're in my real observation of the world, they're bothering me a lot more now. But I think any comment that we wound up making on those issues in this film is as resonant as it ever was, if not more so. And people have been commenting on that. I don't want to say, oh, you know, we got lucky, because I don't want to have been lucky at the expense of our human condition. You know what I mean? But it does seem to be quite timely.
How do you still live?
What if every human being on Earth could live here without a mask? Then the Na'vi people will be gone. Whoa.
You want to spread your fire across the world. You need me.
We must fight! I call upon the warrior mother.
As the story and also the cast of Avatar continues to evolve and expand, while the multi-billion-dollar grossing, billion-dollar production is vast in scope, the films themselves each serve an individual purpose. They have an elemental assignation that defines the unique style of each film, and they each tell their own part of the overall story, like chapters in James Cameron's audiovisual novel about nature and the place and role that humans have within it.
When I was looking at kind of the way you chart through the narrative of it, there's always like a kind of, it sticks very classically to the typical story arc where you reach your crescendo, your denouement, your conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like Avatar, when it comes to looking at the individual bodies of work, you do want them to be isolated narratives within themselves that speak a collective story that unifies them all together?
I couldn't have said it better. Thank you. Yes. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, first of all, the first film, I mean, you can kind of step back and look at it as a kind of trilogy story.
Yeah.
In fact, it's a kind of a standalone piece, the first film, because we didn't imagine that it would really work. We didn't imagine that it would be as successful as it was. And when we set down the path of the sequels, Avatar 2 and 3 were basically all one big story as we first broke story on a whiteboard. And then we just had too many good ideas. And so I wound up, taking the time to smell the roses in both films, split it into two films, and it kind of expanded it and restructured it a bit so that each one would have its own crescendo and its own proximal ending. I think when you get to the end of Fire and Ash, you've basically culminated a big story arc at that point. I think, if you're writing about this, I think it's good for the audience to understand that this doesn't go off a cliff. It's not just a chapter that kind of leads into further chapters. It really kind of completes a big story arc. People, I think, would emerge from the theater satisfied by this story. If we do go on and we do make more Avatar films, and that's an if, based on market forces and how well we do this time, the next story arc begins, and it will also bridge across two films.
Okay. Well, Mr. Cameron, thank you so much for talking to us, and just a great, great history of filmmaking in my life. I truly appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Judita. Good talking to you.